It's finals day here at Masters Tour Bucharest. We are 2 quarterfinals in. We've already seen Kin and Totosh qualify to the semi-finals, and we have 2 matches left to get the other semi-finalists. Next up is going to be Eddie versus SNBrox. Derek, you looking forward to this game?
I am indeed. It's a little bit of a trip away from the European matches that we saw just now between Orange and Totosh, and we will see later on between Hunter Ace and Dead Draw. And we have another Grandmaster on the stage here in Eddie, who has been doing very, very well indeed over in the Americas region. Unfortunately, not quite able to qualify through to BlizzCon, where the global finals will be happening in just a couple of short weeks' time. But he's still consistently been one of the best performing America's Grandmasters. And I think that that is no accident. For a long time, he has been right there, up there at the top of competitive Hearthstone play with these weird control decks. He is one of the most staunch control players I've ever met, up there with Yala, arguably Swids as well, where they just constantly jamming these control decks, and honestly no one can do it like them.
Nobody can do it like them, and funny thing is, Eddie has actually brought control decks with him today. For those of you that haven't seen Eddie playing so far in this event, his lineup is Quest Shaman, N'Zoth Warrior, Quest Druid, and N'Zoth or Resurrect Priest. He has had his Warrior banned on this occasion, but yeah, Shaman, Druid, and Priest. We're in for a long old matchup, I think. Yeah,
it's a weird lineup that Eddie's got because it is kind of control. I definitely agree. He's got the N'Zoth Warrior, he's got the N'Zoth Resurrect Priest as well. But I'd say to an extent, it's actually more anti-control than it is control. It's like kind of greedier versions of control that beat the other anti-aggro control decks that people have knocking about. Quest Shaman. Sorry, obviously very, very strong at taking out some of those slower control decks because of the ridiculous amounts of value it can generate. And this version of the Quest Druid that he's got with Baleful Banker and the new edition of Kun the Forgotten King allows him to effectively go infinite if he needs to. It is the ultimate late game value deck, which really is just Eddie's forte.
On the other side of things, though, we have got Brox. Brox has Rogue, N'Zoth Warrior, Quest Shaman, and his Combo Priest, which has actually been banned. And here you go, let's take a little look at Eddie's lineup here. Here is the Quest Druid. Something that Sottle in particular has been very vocal about saying, you know, Druid isn't very good in this event. But Eddie's made it all the way through to the quarterfinals, and this is typical Quest Druid, no Malygos. What are your thoughts on this deck, Derek?
It's a very interesting new addition, and it's one of 2 builds that I've been seeing that follow this general pattern with the Baleful Banker and the Forgotten King. I was talking to Viper Casey and Bunny Hopper about this Druid, and they were telling me that you should cut King Feoris. They think the deck has enough threats if you're playing it correctly, and you should put in a, you know, whatever it is, another Ferocious Howl or some other kind of anti-aggro card to help out in the early game. Whereas Eddie there is going for an even greedier build, another 10-drop slotted in, which I personally like a lot. I like training wheels on my deck where I'm allowed to just throw down a big threat and it will win me some games.
Quest Shaman is SNBrox's deck, I believe, for this first matchup. And again, this is pretty standard, nothing crazy going on here. Quest Shaman is a deck that hasn't changed all that much. For the most part, it's been replaced in lineups by Token Shaman, but both of these players actually piloted the Quest Shaman all the way here. And yeah, it has been very powerful. Again, it's very good at taking down those control decks.
Yeah, and I think it could be a perfectly fine matchup against the Druid. With the addition of the Desert Hare that we see there thrown in, you're really looking for all the same cards with Token Shaman against Druid as you are with Quest Druid against Druid. You want Hare Evolve, you want Mogu. If you're playing the Evil Totem in Token Shaman, you want that as well, because the amount of value it can generate Druid is against Druid is truly staggering. So I think for the Quest Druid, the Quest Shaman here up against the Quest Druid, it is a perfectly good matchup for Brox to get things going.
All right, well, the first game is just about to get underway. And Derek, I'm going to ask you, we're reaching semi-final stages here. If you had to pick a favorite based on their lineups, Eddie or Brox, who do you think is going to win this one?
I'm liking the look of what Eddie's got going here. I think his control decks should be in a very nice spot against SNBrox's Rogue. His Quest Shaman could be the weak spot there, definitely in that particular matchup. But given that the other ones are the N'Zoth Warrior and the Quest Shaman, which is obviously a mirror as well, I think the Quest Shaman should be in a fine spot for Eddie. And his other 2 decks in the Quest Druid and the N'Zoth Priest, I think should be able to hold up very well against the Rogue.
We have seen Grandmasters doing very well across the board in this tournament. Obviously, Eddie is one of our last Grandmasters standing. We're going to be watching another one in the next series coming up. A very well-known Grandmaster, not going to spoil who, but I'm sure everybody already knows. But for now, Eddie, SNBrox, is the match to happen. I don't believe that this match is going to impact the progression of who gets to Grandmasters in any way, as Eddie is already in, obviously, and I don't believe that Brox is able to now, as Kin has already claimed that spot.
It's interesting that you say that he's one of our few remaining Grandmasters, because since the start of the day, we actually now have more Grandmasters in top 8 than we started with, now that Kin is officially a Hearthstone Grandmaster.
That is funny. That is funny.
And with Totosh very possibly joining him in the European Grandmasters, if he can keep winning, it is a very exciting day. Not only to find out who is the winner of, what was it, almost $100,000 was the ending prize pool, including the Masters Tour bundle.
Of course.
But also, of course, finding out who our 2 Grandmasters are for each region.
All right, here we go. The game is underway. And I really don't feel that we've seen that much of the untapped potential in this tournament. Like the Quest Druid just hasn't been common at all.
It hasn't, and I think with fairly good reason. A lot of players were predicting a lot of priest, a lot of combo priest, and a lot of shaman against it, which it doesn't do very well. And they've also just been thinking there's probably going to be a lot of generic Highlander-y kind of decks. Highlander Paladin, Hunter, or Aggro Warrior, all of which I think have just a fine matchup against the Druid.
I really liked that start from Brox there, by the way, coining out the evil totem rather than playing the quest. Obviously, this totem doesn't proc the quest in any way. But instead, getting this totem on the board, knowing Eddie wants to conserve his mana to proc his quest next turn, and getting a couple of extra lackeys from this. The downside is the one lackey he got is the one that he's not going to want to play. You don't typically want to evolve the evil totem, but ideally he wants to play something with the quest this turn. So it's a little awkward now.
Yeah, and because of that, I'm wondering if you ever just go hero power instead.
Oh, wow.
You have a Mogu in hand, so a totem is far from useless in this scenario, but that does of course mean that your mana is limited by 1 effectively next turn, so the play of Questing Explorer plus Lackey wouldn't be available. I think because he's playing Evolve Shaman instead of the Token Shaman, I like prioritizing anything other than the hero power. Whereas with Token Shaman, when you have Bloodlust, Vicina, Soul of the Murloc, all that goodness, you can just throw down the hero power quite happily. Here though, with the only payoff being Mogu Flesh Shaper, let's just spend our mana on more useful stuff.
Yeah, that's fair. And now for Eddie, obviously he does have the option to Wrath away the evil totem whilst still getting a proc on the quest. But he's really hesitating on that. Do you think he's trying to save Wrath for something better?
Possibly. I think he will end up using it on the totem here.
It feels like a good target, doesn't it?
Yeah, like totem just goes so wrong for Druid if you don't kill off. It's why players coin out Crystal Merchant instead of just playing it on curve to try and get the maximum amount of quest completions. Yeah, he does end up going for here. Because a 3-3 that can come down on turn 3, which is very, very common for the Quest Shaman in the form of Weaponized Wasp, Mind Control Tech, or Bog Slosher, those are all bad, but I just don't think they're anywhere near as bad as the 2, 3, maybe even 4 extra lackeys that could have been generated over the course of the game. I mean, the only real consideration so far for Eddie this game, I think, has been whether he should have wrathed it on 2 and just skipped to completion of the quest.
Yeah, that's fair.
Because he has the perfect curve into Nourish, quest completion going into turn 6, I do like giving your opponent 1 extra lackey in exchange for a Nourish a turn earlier.
Now, a lot of options for Brox here. I mean, that Questing Explorer has to be tempting while the quest is still there. Obviously, it's a lot more useless after the quest has been completed. Alternatively, Evil Cable Rat plus Lackey? It doesn't seem to make a huge difference this turn. But getting some power onto the board, and you know, Questing Explorer is a 2-3. It could even be evolved. I guess this can also be evolved though. Oh, Faceless Lackey picked up though. That's ideal.
Yeah.
Whoa.
It's pretty good on this turn. You generally in this deck want to go for the Faceless Lackey on the same turn as Mogu, where possible. True. Because you effectively make it 2 mana cheaper for a 1 mana card, so it's almost like you're casting a coin on that turn in addition. But given that he obviously didn't want to play the Witchy Lackey because he wants to evolve the Mogu where possible, this seems like a strong compromise, because what does Eddie have in response to this? Swipe? Brilliant. You've just skipped a quest completion and used it on just what was effectively 1 card. I mean,
getting the Venomizer there is just a little bonus.
Oh, yeah,
the 2/2 poison that you can't even... Sorry, Eddie can't even deal with this turn. Very frustrating. Although Eddie's not playing any minions at the moment anyway, so I guess Poisonous being on the board isn't a big deal.
And for Bronx now, I think it's a nice play he made there, and it really just comes down to a case now of trying to make him as strong as possible against the two big plays that Eddie can throw down. Starfall, Oasis Surger. Is there a way he can thread that very, very tight needle of being strong against both those plays at once? We'll have to see. That's a nice pickup though for Eddie. Just being able to throw that in stealth potentially on the next turn while he's waiting for the quest completion might be the bridge he needs to get over the finish line and get that quest completed.
Lots of options for Brox now. Lackey, Mogu Flesh Shaper available, but we. And with Eddie still one proc away from completing the quest, Starfall isn't really anything to be concerned about.
This I like a lot from Brox. I think that the two plays he was really looking at this turn were Weaponized Wasp Face, which feels like you're not developing much. Like the 3 damage to face is obviously not insignificant, but not your primary concern right now. The primary concern is go wide, make big stats. And this does exactly that and sets up for the Mogu Flesh Shaper very nicely next turn.
And for Eddie, there really aren't many options this turn. The only thing he can play from his hand whilst still proccing that quest is War Druid Loti. Maybe he has to forego that quest proc now. Go with the Oasis Surger, split it into 2 3/3s and deal with the 2 3/3 minions on the board, but that feels so nasty.
Yeah, this is where you start having to be very, very conscious of not completing the quest on curve.
Yeah.
Maybe Oasis Surger as 2 3/3s here is good enough to win the game. Probably not. I think it's more likely that he ends up going for the War Druid Loti and setting up for a stronger play in the next couple of turns with Starfall and Oasis Surger, but it's always a consideration.
Yeah, I mean, Loti can rush into something anyway and deal with one of these 3/3s or the 2/2, but getting rid of one of these 3/3s to prevent the damage is looking like the better of those options.
He's just wondering, you know, if I throw it down as a 1/4 with spell power, does it ever survive? Is that worth it?
No, it doesn't. Though Stealth Poisonous is maybe a consideration as well. Yeah, that's the one he's going to go for. Starfall is going to clear a lot of this board next turn, but still not all of it. You know, 2 of these minions are going to survive.
And this is the kind of play that usually, if I saw this, I'd be like, okay, that's an interesting way to approach it. But because it's Eddie, I'm sensing that... I mean, I feel like he can have a strong read, is what I'm trying to say, on Mogu Flesh Shaper plus something going wrong like Evolve. Because SNBrox on his previous turn went for bouncing a Faceless Lackey, which makes a wider board. Rather than any other kind of development, he could have bounced back a Rat to go for more value, played one of the other Lackeys in hand. Instead, he went for the line of play of making the biggest board possible, which usually screams Mogu. That's why they go for these kind of plays. And therefore, Eddie says, instead of removing a 3/3 now, I'm going to protect against an 8-drop on the following turn, which does force Brox into a different line of play.
All hands on deck now, though, as Brox starts hitting the face with everything that he's got. Eddie is going to start to be on the clock. Obviously, Starfall plus Anubiseth Defender is a very nice comeback this turn. He can deal with one of the 3/3s. Every minion with less than 3 health, which isn't actually many of them. And then also trade the Poisonous into something. But the first thing he hovers over is the Nourish. Picking up Wrath is going to make that decision a little bit easier as well, because now he can draw the cards and still play the Wrath and still play the Anubiseth. So that is looking better. But he's going to need some really good stuff over the next few turns.
Yeah, I like the Nourish a lot here. I think it sets up for a couple of very powerful turns. Primarily, Starfall into Swipe on the same turn. When everything's at 3 health, that's the dream. That's exactly what you want to do.
It's true.
Again, there is consideration to just tank the damage as much as possible on this turn. There's even consideration for board locking on this turn,
I was going to say, actually,
you can just tank the... How much was it? 9... it's too much. It's a little bit too much damage there to just be tanking completely, I think. But you really have to consider that against Shaman, because if you board lock them, they can literally do nothing.
Yeah, this is a deck that doesn't run Bloodlust, you know. Yes, it runs Evolves, yes, it runs Mutates, but that's about it when it comes to spells. So, yeah, board locking would have been powerful in of itself. But yeah, like you said, a little bit too much damage there. Eddie would have been on a very low health total with only the hidden Oasis to get himself back up again. That does cost 6 mana, and it's not something he'd have been able to squeeze in over the next turn. How much damage can Brox do now, though? He can Hero Power, play a Lackey, and play Weaponized Wasp.
I mean, I think he probably wants to go Mogu Flesh Shaper on this turn instead. Maybe. It's about how strong of a play he can go for. Like, he could try and save for Evolve to go Desert Hare plus Mogu plus Evolve in the following turns. But I think it's probably a good realization that this has to be starting to go all in now. Things are going wrong.
I mean, it was just almost lethal for Brox that turn with the Rush and the Weaponized Wasp. Okay.
Lucenbark, far from the worst 8-drop that can be developed. It's not aggressive at all, but it does mean that as soon as a Life Drinker is found, he's able to bring it right back up to full health.
My gut reaction when I saw that was just stare at the Deathless to see if there's actually any way to bring it back. But yeah, exactly, Life Drinker with the Hero Power, that just does it.
But more importantly, more immediately, Brox is definitely going to be thinking, right, this looks like lethal to me set up in the next couple of turns. But for Eddie on the other side, he has his own crazy powerful plays coming up. Starfall plus Swipe on this turn is definitely level 1. Clears the board, and means that you are unlikely to die unless they have a very specific hand. And so because of that, I think that's probably the way he's going to go, especially... yeah, it just leads so perfectly into Kun the Forgotten King next turn.
And once Kun the Forgotten King comes down, things change pretty dramatically. It's just 10 armor for free with a 7/7. I don't think there's any play this turn other than Starfall plus Swipe. Hidden Oasis heals him back up to, what, 20? Did they heal for 12?
Yeah. So,
and he puts the 6/6 taunt up. Is that better? It is actually safer to do that.
Effectively more health. Well, you say safer because it's less likely to die on this turn.
Right.
Does that mean better, necessarily?
No, I don't think it does mean better.
Wildly different things here. I think the play here, as Eddie's going for, is realize you can die on this turn. That is a very valid threat you have to consider. But I would take the risk that maybe I end up dying on this turn because next turn, the payoff that you get if you survive almost just locks out the game.
Just heal for 22 immediately.
Oh, yes.
So obviously Life Drinkers are something that Eddie is concerned about now. He's seen one Weaponized Wasp, but the second one, he knows that could be playable with the Hero Power. There's definitely ways for Brox to get lethal, but not present in this hand. Wasp, yes, that can deal 6 damage, but Brox doesn't have any way of dealing any more damage. So things are about to change in this game quite dramatically. Like you said, Kun, that just heals for 10 for free. Hidden Oasis, that's another 12 and a taunt on the board. And then still 4 mana remaining to play the other cheap minion and spell.
So what are the outs now that we are looking at for Brox? Did Eddie swiped face there, didn't he, actually? I just realized he maybe should have actually swiped a minion, even though it does less damage to his opponent, because it's harder for Brox to get the Lucenbark res, exactly.
Yeah, it's only putting down...
Just a random thing I realized.
It's only putting down to 26, though. You need to heal for 5
it's not possible yet, but it's...
You need to kill him at some point.
It's closer, right? Yeah, I mean, I think the game, the lethal here for Eddie is locking down board.
Yeah. The hair being played there, Brox really needs to see an evolve next turn, or that it's looking like it's pretty much game over. I guess a Shudderwalk could do some work over the next few turns at swinging this game back around, but
good point.
This is now a game that's being played for the long haul, because Quest Shaman can do that. Quest Shaman can win in the long haul, absolutely. But it was looking like he was just going to smork Eddie down this game. That just hasn't happened. That plan is game over. Now time to readjust.
So Eddie does need to think, if we are in that long game plan, do I ever hold Kun the Forgotten King? It's something to consider, because if you can get it with Loopy-Doop later on in the game, that's when you start just going silly. You just get ludicrous levels of power when that comes down. I
think this is pretty ludicrous levels of power, personally. It's back up to 30 health again!
It's strong. But this is like Super Saiyan plus 53 when you get down to the right end game of it.
Okay.
Is that a thing? I've never seen the show. How high can it go?
I don't think it goes as high as 53.
No.
I'm just going to...
Not yet.
Well...
Get me on the writing staff. I'd start boosting those rookie numbers.
Second Flesh Shaper, but still no Evolve present for Brox. That's becoming quite a big issue. In fact, really, his hand isn't very powerful at all. Mind Control Tech is just a 3-3 when there's only 3 minions on the other side of the board.
Beautifully played around by Eddie as well, because he had many, many other lines of play he could have considered. Just Kun the Forgotten King plus Cenarius is a really powerful play on that turn to lock down the board and start trying to fight back for lethal. Of course, though, it's weak to Mind Control Tech, and I think this is more than strong enough from Eddie.
So Brox is able to clear the board here, thanks in part to Goblin Lackey, Weaponized Wasp being active, etc., etc. You know, it's doable. He can stay in control of the board, but his hand is running really dry. He needs to pick up a Sludge Slurper or the second Evil Cable Rat or something to generate some value soon, or Eddie is just going to be able to overwhelm him on the board.
Brox decided to trade 2 rabbits instead of 1 to keep a 4-1 Sandstorm Elemental alive, which is probably correct, but there is some consideration for Evolve off the top, and if you should keep the best Evolve board alive as possible.
I just want to point out that with that Innovate draw, Elise is now active and being played immediately. Oh my god. There you go. 2 Oasis Surges, 2 Cenarius, 2 King Phaeorus. What more could you possibly want?
The League of Explorers coming to the rescue here for Eddie, who is starting to look in a bit of a dire situation, but can really swing this one around now. That was the draw.
Yeah. Innovate. Innovate was the draw.
Yes, it was the draw. It's insane. Look at this, still not weak to Mind Control Tech. Plenty of value. He can start moving towards lethal in the next few turns.
Yeah. Brox, you're going to need something really good now, my friend. Again, one of those Lackey generators. Not that one, though.
Yeah.
That's not the one I was talking about. Any of the other Lackey generators would have been just fine.
The consideration really does come now for Brox's early turns as to where this all went wrong. But I think, thinking back, I agreed with most of the lines he was going for. He made his board nice and wide to try and play into a Mogu plus Mutate combo, or Witchy Lackey combo, to try and get a nice big board. And unfortunately, the minion he got was just not strong enough.
Mortals are so squishy.
Brox so low on value here. And we're now reaching that point where Evolve is a really dud draw. He's desperately wanted it for the last few turns, but now with essentially no minion pressure, it's not going to do much. He's just trying to clear the board.
That's right. We're looking at pretty much exactly Novice Engineer would be huge. He's not playing the Witchwood Piper. Sludge Slurper into Barista Lynchen is pretty much a full hand refill and a tremendous amount of value. But at this point, it may just be that little bit too slow.
On the other side of things here, King Phaeorus not doing all that much. There's only a Wrath and an Innovate in hand, which is a little awkward. But Cenarius...
playing around Mind Control Tech by summoning such garbage minions.
I mean, yeah, that is the next question, I guess. How much do you want to play around Mind Control Tech? Because he kind of really slows his play down here by playing around it. Cenarius was an option, but no, he's decided to continue to play around it.
I think it's great.
Yeah.
I think this is more than strong enough.
No, that's not more than strong enough. That's the one card we just said he didn't want.
Yeah, it's just that little bit too late now. And we can talk about how Bronx could have saved the Desert Hare in his hand to go for this out if he thought he was in that bad of a scenario. But honestly, I don't think he was in that bad of a scenario. I think you could argue it was incorrect to hold back that card for purely Evolve because he had a decent shot at taking it. And if he waited 5 turns to go for Hare plus Evolve, he'd probably be so far behind on board that it wouldn't win anyway. And now, however, it's just not even close to winning the game.
Engaging TC-130 into dislocator.
Well, there you go. This is where we're at, Derek. That was the play. Let's make a 3-7 Mind Control Tech with Taunt. And yeah, it's...
Cenarius Innovate Wrath is not quite lethal. Without the Taunt, that was exact lethal there on that turn. So Eddie here, again, really just needs to think, That's the double mind control tech come down. The only card he's weak to now is exactly Shudderwock, which of course has 2 mind control techs stored away in its battle cry. So he still needs to consider it. You still can play around it.
Does he even lose even after that happens? I don't think even Shudderwock is enough at this point. Because yeah, you lose 2 of your minions, but you've still got plenty of other minions on the board. You're still representing lethal even after a Shudderwock.
Yeah, I think you're right.
That is the Shudderwock. There's the punish. So now we're going to find out.
All right, it's going to have to be exactly double 7/7 rush steal.
Yeah, that's right.
I think to have any chance. And even then, I'm not seeing it. But if it was going to be anything, it'd be this one.
We'd see the glow now, I think, if that was what was being taken, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, there's an Elise. There's a taunt.
Is this it? Is it the evolve? That keep was the win here? It's a good evolve he's got here.
Yeah, true.
He's just dead if he doesn't do it anyway. Let's see the full taunt board.
Oh, Houndmaster Shaw gives everything rush. Brox can actually clear the board. Can he?
That's the card he needed. He can trade away the Reborn to make sure it dies, which is another minion that he can rush in. But he has to run that into the 4-2 first. He has a taunt in play in the Bone Wraith, of course. I don't think that's quite enough.
I don't think it is. But he does keep the taunt alive, although obviously Eddie has what he needs to deal with it.
Yeah, yeah. Trade.
Yeah, he's just keeping Cenarius alive and hoping that it's not enough to kill him. So the second Cenarius buffs this up. Innovate, Wrath
Starfall.
Still doesn't... Well, he can't do all of that, right? Oh, he's got the Floop. Sorry, he had the Floop Shadow Cenarius, yeah. Wow! Master Shaw was the card needed, but it still wasn't quite enough, as Zephyrus is picked up now anyway. That is going to do it.
If there was any sequence of cards that could get Brox there, it had to be exactly those ones. Honestly, I thought he may be able to pull that one back.
There was a very delayed reaction there with both of us. We can see all these minions can attack.
Why does it have rush?
Why does that have rush? What? I saw the Scargill first and was like, why can Scargill attack right now? Okay. Oh, well. Close game there, but Eddie does take the first one down with his Quest Druid. Oh, okay. That was a very nice start to the series.
Yeah, I think very well played by Eddie. The early decisions are often the most crucial with the Quest Druid as to how you progress towards your quest. And I think Eddie showed fantastic understanding of how you play that matchup. The Evil Totem is the card you need to get rid of at the start of the game, more than worthy of a Wrath. And as we saw, not being baited into going for an early Starfall, instead realizing Nourish, go for the ramp, go for the swing turn next turn, was exactly the combo he needed to pull things around.
All right, moving swiftly on. Eddie now has 2 remaining decks to win with before he makes the semi-finals. That is his very own Quest Shaman and also his N'Zoth Priest. Up against Brox, who still has his Quest Shaman to win with, along with his Tempo Rogue, which is a little bit different. It runs Chef Nomi in it, and his N'Zoth Warrior. So we've still got quite a long series ahead of us. I hope the players aren't too exhausted after that very adrenaline-filled first game.
Yeah, it's the debate that we've seen with the Rogue that's been raging on for months now, basically ever since Myra's Unstable Element and then Chef Nomi came out a few months later, of what is your win condition after you play Myra's Unstable Element. Of course, traditionally it was Faldori Strider. You just draw all your 4/4s and that should win you the game. Those then rotated out and we were thinking, okay, maybe it's Chef Nomi, that seems okay. You know, you can go for a board full of 6/6s, and then people realized a lot of the time it's just too dead to be going for. People went for Zephyrus when that came out, because you can then get the perfect card to try and win the game from thereafter. But it does mean that you are left with a very, very dead card if you don't hit the Myra's Unstable Element. So Chef Nomi here could be the biggest blessing and the biggest curse for Brox heading forward.
Yeah, it's certainly an interesting one. And again, like you said, Nomi has been experimented with on and off ever since the dawn of the card existing. But yeah, I think generally people haven't been too impressed with it. What are your thoughts on Nomi at the moment? Have you tried it recently in Rogue?
No. The Rogue that I've been playing was a lot similar to the kind of tempo versions of the deck as opposed to the aggro versions. Okay. Because like Rogue's been on a bit of
questing, right?
Right, yeah. It's been on a weird journey where when Mage, Reno Mage was at its height of popularity with 5 mana Luna's Pocket Galaxy, aggro Rogue was a very strong pick because you could just kill them before turn 5 a lot of the time with the cutlasses and the extra minions that you could throw down early on and all the damage through to face. Rogue went out the way, aggro Rogue, Mage went out the way, sorry, and the aggro Rogue just disappeared. It didn't have many good matchups anymore. It was really just preying on the one dominant deck. But now, of course, we're seeing the list coming through with Questing, Spirit of the Shark as well, which I'm a big fan of, and Heist Baron Togwaggle to close things out. It's a card that we have had an up and down relationship with. At first, we thought it would be the best card ever printed. Turns out it wasn't, but it's still just very, very strong. And I think the slightly more value-oriented rogues that still have the Waggle picks and the Leroy in there is my favorite way to go.
Okay, well, that is that's the rogue deck that we've sort of gone through, but obviously we've...
Sorry for the long explanation.
That's okay. The players are back. I believe we just took a second there, but we are ready to get going with game number 2 any second now. Going back to Eddie then. He has got his N'Zoth Priest, or his Resurrect Priest, which has the Hakar the Soul Flayer in it. Something we've seen a little bit of in this tournament. And personally, I'm a big fan of Hakar. Obviously, it only works in very specific matchups, but it's just a cool mechanic. It's a card I've always liked ever since Naturalize. But before, when Naturalize was a thing with Togwaggle decks and everything, it's just it's just a very interesting way of ending games. Yeah,
I think it's got a very, very good spot in the metagame at the moment because it's got a lot of weird interactions you can go for. When you start factoring in, of course, the Elysiana that you can go for later on in order to shuffle some bloods into your deck, and then just get rid of them by rewriting your deck and leaving your opponent drawing these corrupted bloods over and over again, which just means you destroy any deck that does not have an ultimate late game win condition. You also have a slightly weird interaction with Hakar where you can just shut down some of the Highlander decks because the multiple copies of Bloods in the deck shut down Zephrys and mainly Elise. That's mainly for the Druid matchups because most other decks that run Zephrys or the Highlander cards play them before that matters. But it's a very slight but still something you have to consider benefit.
And we used to think that it was going to be bombs that shut down the Highlander decks.
How innocent we were. It is crazy how that was like never a thing once. Like not even for a week, it felt like that was a real hindrance to the Highlander plan because I suppose it really was. We were so skeptical of the Highlander decks because of the dominance of Bomb Warrior beforehand before people realized Bomb Warrior is just not very good anymore. You need a lot more of a defensive mechanism to keep up with the aggro decks. But heading into the N'Zoth Resurrect Priest for Eddie up against the Quest Shaman for Brox. It could be a bit of a harder matchup here for Eddie, I would imagine. There's obviously a good amount of removal early on, which allows you to go 1-for-1 for their remove, to not fall too far behind on board very, very easily. But that's not really what you want, honestly. You don't want to just be playing removal cards against Quest Shaman, because eventually they will start generating stupid amounts of value, and you will not be able to keep up then. And the problem, again, is for Eddie, as soon as he starts trying to go wide on board with a Xerix Cloning Gallery or an N'Zoth or a Resurrection, he all of a sudden is running into the problem of Mind Control tech. He's not healing on that turn, so maybe the Life Drinkers can get over there. It is not an easy matchup for Eddie.
It's not an easy matchup at all. Mind Control tech is incredibly powerful with that kind of thing, but I guess for Eddie, he has to sort of play around it, as he was last game, playing around it very well, until he gets to that point where he no longer needs to play around it, if that makes sense. If his board gets so big that Mind Control tech isn't as much of an issue, or if he gets enough refill in his hand so that Mind Control tech isn't much of an issue.
So Brox here really does want to go for a Desert Hair plus Evolve combo at some point in the coming turns. That is one of the ways that you can try and just smork out a Priest in the early turns, because if they miss the Mass Hysteria, that is just how you can dominate the early turns and potentially even kill them before they get to the ultimate late game scenario. Although that is very difficult to do. That's one of the reasons why I think Eddie kept the Mass Hysteria in the starting hand, because of that exact combo of cards. It does still seem like, though, that Bronx is considering going with the Desert Hair on this board, even without an Evolve in hand.
Yeah, I mean, just getting stuff onto the board makes sense. I don't believe that there's many early ways for Eddie to clear this.
I think that's the thing, yeah.
It is just guaranteed damage banked immediately.
No Pyros, no Holy Ripples.
Oh, he gets the Evolve with the Mogu Flash Shaper in hand.
You also have the chance to just rip the Evolve off the top like an absolute lord.
Was that one for Subtle?
That's for my boy.
Okay.
I mean, he can just go all the way in here if he wants to.
Slurper, Lackey,
right, exactly.
Shaper Evolve.
Yeah. And you're getting a little bit scared there because there's a slight chance of Doomsayer, which if you're a normal person, you won't hit. For me, you absolutely will. Okay, that's now unplayable because it board locks.
Board space is an issue. If not for the board space issue, that would be fantastic right now. But yeah, I guess you'll just have to take the evolve without the Faceless Lackey too, and see what appears.
But Eddie, for a man who is facing down the absolute nightmare scenario, really is not all too sad. He should be able to clear up the vast majority of this and not just die instantly. And then after that, Brox is left with not the best hand I've ever seen.
Let's watch some fireworks. Oh, wow. That couldn't have gone any better for Eddie. After that incredible start from Brox, Brox can't help but smile a little bit there. It's like, yep, that just happened.
That's how you do it. And to be fair to Eddie, you know, he kept that card. If you asked him here, why did you keep Mass Hysteria, he would say exactly Hair Evolve. I guarantee you. It's the only thing you were afraid of in the early game from the Quest Shaman. And therefore, it was a fantastic keep. He deserved to stay alive there.
Well, Brox is able to complete the turn this turn. If he wanted to, he could Cable Rat Lackey, and it looks like he is. The only problem with going this way is that he is using up literally all of the value in his hand. Does pick up a second Evolve there, which could come in handy at some point. I mean, generally with Discover, the unwritten rule is you pick the card that's in your deck, right?
Kind of. Reign of Toads is pretty good here just to like get a big board in play.
Well, again, he's run out of value.
Yeah,
that is sort of value.
It's just the highest value card. It's kind of like the most highest value Shaman spell that you can generate at the moment. All the others are fairly reactive, honestly.
That's a good draw after completing the quest.
It's a fantastic draw. He's got to think about how he answers this convincing infiltrator first. The answer could be just ignore it and don't attack for a few turns. I would accept that answer, definitely.
Okay.
Because again, there's no Pyromancer, no Holy Ripple. These 1/1s are probably sticking about for a fair few more turns.
Yeah, and the alternate is sort of, you know, hero power, play the Sandstorm Elemental, trade everything in, lose the Sandstorm Elemental, and then have it Psycho Pumped back out anyway. So, yeah, Reign of Toads does seem nice here. There is a second Mass Hysteria in Eddie's hand, but this board doesn't really justify it. Shadowed Pain, Heal and Face, Forbidden Words is an option.
I'm just wondering if I liked the Reign of Toads there, because
the overload is significant.
It is very significant. And I'm just wondering, what does this actually accomplish here? You know, I feel like this never puts an aggressive enough push to actually win the game in the next few turns. But at the same time for Brox, I'm trying to think about what the biggest win condition he can set forward for here. My answer to that would probably be just start drawing through your deck. You know, find something else if this isn't working for you. Probably in the form of generating a whole bunch of lackeys, trying to go in with Barista Lynchon and generating lots of damage. Because I think in these kind of awkward board-locked scenarios where neither player can get a big advantage, generally what you want to do as the Quest Shaman is start generating an awful lot of face damage in the form of the Life Drinkers, the Weaponized Wasps, and of course the Kobold Lackeys, if you can get them as well. And the other thing as well, that it's not necessarily a huge downside of the play, but it does mean that Eddie's not guessing what the spell is anymore. Or every time you just leave that spell you generated in your hand, Eddie has to consider Bloodlust. You force him to at least think about it, which maybe makes him play a little bit weirdly.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Especially in an open at deckless tournament, holding on to a discovered spell can make all of the difference.
Yeah.
For Brox now, though, again, not all that much he can do. Those convincing infiltrators are very frustrating. It's looking like it's probably going to be a case of your hero power, Novice Engineer. Hopefully pick up something to do with your 8-mana next turn.
I guess his thinking as to why you hold the Novice would maybe be to play the Novice and bounce it on the same turn with one of the Bog Sloshers, which is fairly powerful. You know, if you have a full hand, you generally want to bounce Weaponized Wasps, Life Drinkers, or one of the lackeys with Bog Slosher. But if you don't have that luxury, then Novice Engineer is very strong.
I hope you like my invention.
It's somewhat protected by the taunt anyway. But yeah, Questing Explorer and Evil Totem are not the cards you want to pick up after the quest's been completed, and Thaurissan is not the card you want to see in your opponent's hand when there's still a convincing Infiltrator that you could have dealt with a couple turns ago, protecting it.
Oh yeah, Thaurissan is the absolute boy here for Eddie. It allows him to go a beautiful 8 into 9 curve, should he desire, of course, in the next couple of turns. I guess actually N'Zoth is probably not quite juiced up enough yet to really consider going for it. But at the very least, it's a threat that from Brox's point of view, kind of has to be dealt with. But it's not the worst turn that I've ever seen for Brox. The Sandstorm Elementals are obviously not designed for this matchup.
Pretty good turn, though.
Yep.
Yeah. The Evil Totem does stick to the board, and it does have a very good shot at surviving here, actually. Although on the other side, Eddie does have Cloning Gallery, and that's being slammed straight down. Forget Mind Control tech. It just doesn't matter.
Absolutely filthy. It's like the one thing you would consider here is that, okay, maybe Eddie doesn't have the ability to go for a big N'Zoth quite yet, and therefore, if it was purely reactive options for Eddie there, that might have been the window for Brox, because he can just chip in, you know, 4-5 damage a turn. It doesn't seem like much, but all of a sudden, Kobold Lackey, Life Drinker, Wasp, and your opponent's just dead. But when this comes down, into N'Zoth, into Mass Resurrection, into whatever you want, the Shaman just loses on board.
Yeah. Once again, Hakar is a factor.
Hakar is a clown fiesta, is what it is.
Hakar is a bit of a clown fiesta. Yeah, we'll see what Mind Control tech takes, though.
Engaging TC-130 into dislocator.
Does take one card too. That makes the N'Zoth a little weaker. But yeah, the Resurrect is going to happen this turn.
Honestly, it doesn't even make it much worse. You're still looking at 2 card suits, 2 Infiltrators, and a Hakar all coming back, which is, I think, safe to say it's good enough to win.
Yeah. Oh, Hakar's really confusing here because that Elysiana's on the board, but obviously hasn't been drawn yet, so it can't be played from the hand. Eddie himself might end up drawing some of these bloods, but I guess that just doesn't matter too much.
Eddie here, I think, has absolutely the right idea.
Oh boy. That's a good combination of cards.
Yeah, that's insane.
Now N'Zoth is in overdrive. It's going to do everything. Thaurissan is making the penance cost 0.
Yeah. I really like here that Eddie's playing proactively as well. I've seen a lot of priest players play this as control priest as opposed to resurrect priest.
Okay.
I feel like it's the power of the deck is not the strong removal, despite that the removal is very, very strong. It's the abuse of the resurrection effects that you can go for, which just make for the most ridiculous of turns, against which Brox just really can't fight back against. Because for Eddie, even just a Psycho Pump is almost like a full Mass Resurrection in its own right, because if it's able to get a Infiltrator or an Emperor Thaurissan with Reborn, that is not easy to be dealt with for Brox. For 3 mana, I beg your pardon.
Convincing Infiltrator is such an awkward card to play around / deal with or anything.
Nice use of the Big Bad Voodoo here, though, to get yourself a 6-drop.
Bye, 6-drop. I mean, it's amazing that we're in a meta right now where Sylvanas is back, but Convincing Infiltrator is run instead of Sylvanas.
Was that a missed attack?
Oh, was it?
Yeah, I think that was a missed attack on the rat there to take out the 3-1, which is pretty big, actually. It is probably not game deciding, in all honesty.
It feels like regardless of what happened, like Eddie's going to have a full board of Cartoots next turn anyway. This way, I guess he gets an extra trade first, gets rid of a 3-3. It's a little annoying.
Eddie does need to consider if it's N'Zoth on this turn or if it's clear up operation first on this turn. It's weird with Plague of Death for him because it's probably not going to be much good later, but it's not that good now either.
Okay, only one of those has died, right?
Yes.
That's a very lucky Psycho Pump.
Yeah. That's nuts. Could get himself another one off of it.
Yeah, this is the thing. Katrina can now get
replicate.
get an extra resurrect every single turn, and it's got reborn, so it's not going anywhere anytime soon. I don't know, Derek. This game feels pretty over to me.
Are you telling me that if Katrina had reborn and cost 3 mana and summoned a 3/1, you would play it?
Yes.
Intriguing stuff. Learning a lot about you here, Fowler. I mean, even then, I'd just play my 0 mana 8-drop as Shaman and I'd laugh at you.
Fair enough. Hakar comes back as well. Oh my goodness. Evolve is a good draw, though.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing that Bronx needs here, but I just wonder if it's enough.
No, let's go. Weaponized Wasps is going to evolve into Hellmaster Shore, and then we are go time.
Okay, I'm on board.
We've seen it once this series.
Yeah.
To be fair, with the hero power, the life drink of the Goblin Lackey, like there is definitely some work that can be done here for Brox. I don't know if it's enough, though.
It's just the problem against playing against this priest is you know that if you do finally manage to clear the board in the best case scenario, it instantly gets wiped because they always have the full board clear to deal with what you've got.
He can't deal with Katrina.
Is there no way?
I don't think he can, because he's got to get through the Kartoot twice first. So I think the best thing you can do, right, is Life Drink Code, Goblin Lackey to trade that in. 1/1 goes into the rest, and then that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 damage that can go into Katrina.
I think if you rush the Life Drink, then I think you might play
It's the right way.
with the Lightning Bolt.
He's got the Lightning Bolt too, but I don't think he can then deal with the Reborn version.
Fair enough. Yeah, fair enough. Just giving it everything you can.
$20 damage on the board now for Eddie, huh?
Is Socket Sapper? Oh yeah, it's a Pyro. I almost forgot that minion's a Pyro. I was wondering why does it have +1/+1? I was very confused there, but yes, the South Sea Captain also gives it +1/+1. It's a good card to get here though. Honestly, sapping one of your opponent's minions here is very strong.
So this is a bit of a mess right now for Eddie, as he's got 20 damage available. He can just go for, 18 damage available. He can just go for halfway to lethal, but really he does need to clean up a lot of this board. It's not too difficult. Death deals with one thing, Penance deals with another thing, trade a couple times, I guess. Yeah, I mean, once Brox runs out of stuff, he sort of runs out of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I like everything that I'm seeing right now. The only other real consideration is Direwolf Alpha, but yeah, you can just trade on that anyway. Very nice. Just give yourself don't kill off the Socket Sapper on this turn, I think, because you want to give yourself the highest chance of getting another minion off Katrina Muerte, and losing the Reborn on that would be horrible as well.
Yep. I like seeing the trade there. Hakar going face, also very nice. Let's start to get that clock going. Oh no, Convincing Infiltrator, but Mind Control Tech picked up. I guess they're all pretty okay targets, and also all pretty bad targets by the same token. That's arguably the worst one.
I don't even know anymore, man. It's all going.
He can give it rush, I
weird.
guess.
Yeah. So he can go rush the Goblin, so rush the Hakar into the Convincing Infiltrator, and then hope that the Socket Sapper dies. So you should go Socket Sapper into the 3/4, Hakar to kill off the 2/6, hope that this Sapper dies and Katrina goes back to hand.
Do you deal with the other Kartoot first with the Evil Cable Rat?
Yes. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think this is the play. I like this sequence.
Okay. Again, we're at the point really where Brox needs to draw Shadow Walk for anything to happen now.
Yeah.
Let's see if that perfect sequence that you envisioned happened. No, it's the 2/2. Katrina's still going.
It's still fine. You know, a 4/1 is annoying here for Brox, for Eddie, most certainly.
It's like a much worse Infiltrator, isn't it?
I think that card's pretty good. I would play Socket Sapper in a Rogue and not be too sad about it. Definitely in Hooked Us Rogue.
Box Losher really not looking like it's enough to do anything to this board.
You can get MCT. Hero Power MCT, get a couple of steals.
Okay.
I think that's the biggest chance he has.
Take 2 Kartoots and you're alive for longer. That's another turn closer to Shadow Walk. Yeah, my mistake. Or do you want the Conceiving Infiltrator?
That's the part I'm trying to figure out now.
The card you don't want is N'Zoth. I think we can all agree on that one.
Yes.
Anything else is fair game.
Unless you can bounce it and then res your card, and it's terrible.
You don't really want Katrina either. Okay, yeah, this is fine.
Yeah, I'm happy with this. Now Sarkit Sapper, of course, finally can get that bounce on one of the opposing minions. Maybe not bounce N'Zoth, please.
Okay.
Thank you very
Held
much.
my breath for a second there.
Yep, all correct, all correct, all correct. Starts to beg the question for Eddie if that N'Zoth last turn was a bit premature, you could argue, because it was strong. It was undeniably very, very powerful. But the problem is you want to make sure that all cards in your hand are utilized where possible. You know, if you can win your game with just one card, you do it. But if you need more than that one card to win, he could have tried to find a way to get use out of the Shadow of, the Plague of Death there, where on the previous turn, Plague of Death just wipes the board completely. Yes, you lose your Katrina, but it's not the end of the world. And then you go for N'Zoth on the following turn and just end the game.
Eddie has 3 full board clears. Just want to point that out for a second.
Right, and that's what I mean. He could have used them, because the problem is now, after he's used the board clears, he has no threats. SNBrox can extend the game almost indefinitely, it feels like. Whereas if he'd cleared the board of the mind control tech, the bounce on the MCT would not have even been available.
Yeah. Well, there is a second Mass Resurrection at some point, which is going to be relevant. For now, Katrina is still going off. Thurasan again. Probably not really doing that much anymore. 3 mana Mass Hysteria, 2 mana Mass Hysteria.
Yeah, it's old hat at this point.
Yeah. Okay.
That's what you need. That is what you need.
Now we're cooking.
I wonder if Earthshock's ever better than Hex? Yeah. I think I like that. Plague of Murlocs.
Oh, Plague of Murlocs. That would mess up the Resurrect pool.
Yeah. And I think even more than that, it just allows you to potentially get ahead on board. It's the pick.
Oh, this is so good.
Blazing Invocation.
More
Whole lot of
battle
value. Stormbringer. Ooh.
So you can make a board of Murlocs, then turn your board of Murlocs into legendaries.
Sign me up. I want to turn my Scargills into Scargills.
There's little time.
Is he wondering if it's ever Soul of the Murloc to give you a stickier board on this turn? Yeah, I think I like the Stormbringer too. Both for the memes and the dreams.
So get rid of...
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
This is all good. Does mean that Brox still somehow is in with a chance in this game, despite having seen Katrina Muerte res I don't even know how many minions at this point.
2 bloods drawn by Eddie already. Okay, that's filled up his deck with a lot of trash. 4 bloods, 4 cards out of those 16, but then Elysiana's drawn.
Ooh.
I kind of feel like he has to play it.
So it's the biggest threat he can play on this turn. It's the only threat he can play on this turn, for that matter. Can Brox ever just go for fatigue at that point is the thing he has to consider.
Oh my goodness, what is happening with this game?
Of course, 2 of the cards in Brox's deck are Bloods themselves, because 2 Hakanas have died. And I think there's still a Hakai in Eddie's deck. Like, it was brought off by the gallery, resurrected by Katrina, and then stolen by MCT.
Yeah.
It's been a weird old game.
I was ready to declare this game over about 10 turns ago.
Yeah.
I thought that Brox was done for. Brox was out of cards and everything. What? N'Zoth? I have no words.
That's insane.
We no doubt. The unwritten rule is that if there's a card in a Discover that's already in your deck, typically
yes, you
put
pick it.
You
You pick that bad boy.
Shadow Walk drawn now, though. That is actually Brox has a lot of decent options available now. Plague of Murloc is still worth considering. Faceless Lackey into the Stormbringer is something to look at, and also Blazing Invocation is very, very powerful in this deck.
Problem is still just those guys knocking about on opponent's side of the board.
Yeah.
So there are 2 Sandstorm Elementals in the Battlecry pool for Shudderwalk, so you could clear them off. But I think I agree with Brox here that killing off is just not good enough. I want to start being proactive now.
So we're going for Murlocs or Legendaries? I think we're going for Legendaries.
Sign me up.
Nostalmo. Oh! Oh, Sylvanas as well?
Shutterbox not a beast. I think he was just checking that quickly before he goes for the overkill with the 7-7.
Oh, it wouldn't overkill the 7-7, but it would overkill Thorsan, yeah.
Right, light bomb, poof, clear the board.
Oh. Well, that was short-lived.
It's fun while it lasted. Though. He's wondering if he's thinking quickly, can I go for Mass Hysteria plus Lady in White? And then I think he says, Nosdorm is burning, just play your card, man.
Yeah. So does Brox go with the Invocation now, or does he just get on and play Shuttlewalk?
You've got to jam the walk, right?
I think that's right.
The problem is, though, it draws cards, and with 2 bloods in his deck, Brox is close to dying. I don't think he's played a Life Drinker so far this game, so Shuttlewalk does not even heal him.
I feel like I'm leaning towards Blazing Invocation here. Just hope you get a decent battle cry.
Yeah, it does.
Maybe even a Sludge Slurper or an Evil Cable Rat for Weaponized Wasp activation. Maybe that's wishful thinking.
It does mean you can't play a Lackey on this turn, though, with the Shuttlewalk. Yeah.
All right, here we go.
I think it's just got to come down. Because if you're not drawing cards quickly and actively moving towards winning the game, you're losing just a little bit slower, which is just as bad.
Wind Fury, very interesting.
Oh, there has been one Life Drink. Sorry.
I'll let you off this once.
There is little time. My hand is too full.
Wasn't able to overdraw a blood,
Yeah,
sadly for him.
He could, though, in the future.
Yes, yeah. Oh, Baleful Banker! Baleful Banker!
Did that come from
That's
Blazing
insane.
Invocation?
Yes!
Oh my goodness.
That can shuffle a Shuttlewalk into his deck. Oh! Which means maybe he can go for the Fatigue. Because then Shuttlewalk would get Baleful Banker in the pool, so maybe it can shuffle another minion into his deck again.
At the moment, Brox just does nothing, right? He just sits there with a full hand and burns the bloods. That's like step 1.
Sure, yeah.
N'Zoth is going to be a problem for Brox, and the fact that that wasn't a blood is really unfortunate as well.
But if he doesn't play anything, he just dies. I think he has to try and win with Lava Bursts, Lackeys, and Wasps to the face.
Okay, that's a lot of damage.
I think. Because if he just passes every turn until he's in Fatigue, he does not win. His Shuttlewalk's dead, so he can't go for Banker on the Shuttlewalk again. He's got to play cards. The nightmare.
There's no more card generation in hand, so he can't play cards and then fill up his hand again, unfortunately.
I mean, he's already looking at, what, 15, 18 damage on this turn? 20 with the Goblin Lackey as well. It's close to lethal here, man.
Oh my goodness. And Eddie still has... Oh no, he doesn't have the blood, sorry. Of course, he played Elysiana.
Yeah. But then he's thinking, of course, if I do go for that, can he just Plague of Death my board and then the game's over? He has to make use of the Wind Fury first, right? That has to be the play.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I like this a lot. I think this is really, really smart.
Bank it while you've got it. And Weaponized Wasp, going to be the other 6 damage. Again, taking advantage of there being a Lackey already on the board. I wonder if he plays Baleful Banker now. Maybe on the Wasp or something. Just that's one more card in the deck that's not a blood.
Sure.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, you could definitely consider it on the Wasp there.
But
Soul of the Murloc feels a little bit stickier, though it demands Plague of Death here. And he knows that if Eddie does go for Plague of Death, unless it's massively reduced, he just dies. But the Omega Medic comes to the rescue. That is the card.
Back up to 17 health again. Brox only has 9 damage ready to go. There's the first blood. 2 more bloods are going to be shuffled into the deck after this draw. Make that 4 more bloods shuffled into the deck now. 6 cards in the deck, 4 of them are bloods. I don't know how Brox wins this again. I think we're back here.
If he goes Evolve into Corcoran off of the Desert Hare, then he has 4... it's not lethal.
Well, he can Hare and then play Flesh Shaper and mutate that.
Yeah.
Rag. Still not getting there, is it?
No. Gives him a chance though. Like he needs to try and just set up for lethal with the Lackey next
He could
turn.
make a board with the Desert Hares and Mogu Flesh Shaper and Kobold Lackey and Plague of Murlocs. Does he have the mana for that?
Right. I mean, this turn probably involves shuffling the Kobold Lackey back into his deck.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, this has to go face. This has to go face.
I'm just trying to work out if there's like, is there a Bluegill Warrior lethal somewhere? There's.
There is little time.
Oh man.
And you got to remember for Eddie, well, even though he picked the N'Zoths and they were insane most likely, he just doesn't even need them. Oh yeah, the hair was bounced back by the sludge, the bog slosher off the Shuttlewalk.
Let's stash that away.
No time.
Yeah, I like shuffling back the Lackey there.
Gets it
Two of
twice
them
as
back
well,
into his
yeah.
deck. Ooh.
So now half of the deck are Bloods. Gets the Scar Kill from the Mutate. Wow. And now Eddie doesn't really have anything going on. It's going to have to just be Mass Hysteria.
That's right. He's thinking, do I ever attack first? Do I ever play Razorfen first to add more to the nonsense that can go on?
Do you hit? If you're attacking, you're hitting the Scargill, I guess.
He could just go double Razorfen plus Mass Hysteria and then heal his own face at the end.
Isn't there still a good chance that his own minions hit each other? And I'm not sure how much that improves the percentages by.
Maybe, I don't know.
I'm not going to pretend to understand Mass Hysteria
I mean,
amounts.
he should start by attacking face. That is his best chance of winning the game, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Just make it 2 bloods instead of 3 that are needed.
I agree with that.
Wow, okay. Just going with the maximum chance of clearing the board instead.
And he does it. That's everything clear.
Don't mess with
Razorfen, heal face. Now it's back to Brox. And I don't believe Brox has many ways of clearing this board, honestly. 9 damage available for Brox, but it's not enough.
Right, so if he goes Hero Power, Kobold Lackey face, Mogu, and then gets, that's 4 damage down to 11. If he gets 2 Bluegill Warriors, that's down to 6. No, 7. Sorry, 7. And then it's not lethal.
No, it's not.
I don't think there are any outs here.
Does he have to Kobold Lackey one of these 2/3s?
Wait. What if he goes just like assume he can't? He has to assume he doesn't draw a blood. If he draws that as the next card, he's lost.
Yeah.
So he has to tank the 6 damage on this turn,
Yep.
survive, Hero Power, Kobold Face,
Yep.
Lava Burst. That still doesn't win. Something else has to happen.
There's little time.
Okay, he's going to deal with a minion. Or deal with both minions. I assume this Mogu Flesh Shaper deals with the other one. And then maybe Plague of Murlocs. Lava Bursting the other minion. He's trying to make a board! Second Lady in White.
What was lost?
Eddie's thinking, where are my 2 N'Zoths? Like,
I
there's
mean,
2
I
N'Zoths in
think
this
he
deck
picked them.
somewhere.
I'm pretty sure he picked them.
There's no way you don't pick them. Oh dear.
That's
There's
one.
There's the second one. That's going to be the game. Eddie, after what's been the first 2 games of maybe the wackiest series I've seen, Eddie does come out on top with his Resurrect Priest. He is leading this one 2-0 with only his Quest Shaman remaining. Oh man, Derek, do you have any final words about that game?
It was very, very long and lots of different ways that could have been approached. For Eddie there, I'm really just wondering still if the plays he could have considered to maximize his chances were using his removal a little bit more aggressively and setting up for that ultimate N'Zoth to just win the game. It could be the fact that I'm underestimating how well Shaman can just deal with a N'Zoth from no board. But my understanding is if you go for the Plague of Death, then just play out the N'Zoth, especially after you've seen a couple of mind control techs, they just don't really have any way to deal with that board and swing things back outside of like exactly generating a Plague of Murlocs off of an Ethereal Lackey. And then on the other side, I think for Brox, after a certain point, like those last 1, maybe 2 turns, there wasn't a way he could set up lethal, but it was pretty brutal.
I cannot imagine how many possible timelines there were for that game. What if the Plague of Murlocs had been played before? What if this had happened? What if that had happened? Oh my goodness, but at the end of the day, Eddie does take it down. He is 1 win away from the semi-finals here at Masters Tour Bucharest. Again, his only remaining deck is actually the Quest Shaman, so Brox needs to win the mirror and win with his N'Zoth Warrior and win with his Tempo Rogue.
Yeah.
Do you think that's likely to happen against Eddie's Quest Shaman? The
No.
3 wins?
I think that there's a couple of decent matchups. The Rogue, I think, should fare pretty well against the Quest Shaman, at least better than the Token Shaman. That's a very, very bad matchup for the Rogue, but the Quest Shaman can struggle against aggro a little bit. And for the other decks, I mean, Quest Shaman is mainly an anti-control deck for the most part, so I think the Warrior could really struggle.
Yeah. It doesn't really have that much to do in the late game.
Yeah.
Yes, it's got the 1 copy of Elysiana, but the problem is against the Quest Shaman, it's not surviving, it's not dying. Right? That's the issue. Quest Shaman does just overwhelm most decks with the Life Drinkers and the Wasps, etc., with that hero power. It's just too much for the Warrior to deal with.
Yes, I agree completely. And then on the other side, the Quest Shaman Mirror. I'm trying to think if there's anything big that swings it in either player's favor. But for the main part, I think you're looking to, at the start of the game, try and win the game through going for crazy big tempo swings. I'm always looking for Hair, Evolve, Mogu, Mutate, all that good stuff at the start of the game, and then transition into a value plan if that doesn't work. And honestly, I think so far, because Brox has been losing with his own Quest Shaman against some control decks from Eddie, I think he should be very, very scared about where this series is heading.
All right, well, we are well underway with quarter-final number 3. This has been one of the wackiest series that I've seen in a long time. You don't want to miss the end of this one. It's coming up. It's quarterfinal number 3 between Eddie and SNBrox here at Masters Tour Bucharest. We have just had 2 of the craziest games of Hearthstone that I have ever seen, with the Priest game in particular previously being very, very back and forth. We declared it over. I declared it over at least long before it was actually over. Brox really did try and fight his way back into the game, but it wasn't meant to be. And Eddie now sits 2-0 in this series.
Yeah, again, I'll have to be asking Eddie about his sequences of removal, but for the most part, it felt very, very strong for him there. He knew what he was doing, trying to extend it through to the late game and run the Shaman out of the majority of resources before just locking down the board in that mid-late stage game. But it does now mean that he has just his own Quest Shaman left to win with. Knights have any class left to take a win with in a best of 5.
Be Shaman?
I would choose Shaman. Yeah. I think it is just far and away the strongest deck at the moment, or class at the moment, no matter which version you're playing.
It's 2 very distinct decks that we've seen in this tournament. It's the more aggressive token Shaman, and then it's the more, I guess, control-y or late game or even anti-control Quest Shaman. And honestly, both have been very, very powerful in this series. Brox has some real work to do if he wants to take down America's GM, Eddie.
He does, and obviously it doesn't matter which way he's queuing his decks now in terms of the fact that he has to win with all 3 of them, but I do think that the Rogue could be his best bet to sneak in with a win at the start there. The Shaman is a mirror match, of course, and then the Warrior, I feel personally, is pretty poorly situated against the Quest Shaman. You do still have the N'Zoth in the N'Zoth Warrior, understandably.
You only have one, though.
You only have one, yeah, exactly, to go for some late-game dominance. And it does feel like Brox just wants to get a win in here before he ends out the series. Or before he completes the reverse sweep, which is also possible, of course.
Chef Nomi picked up already. Obviously, that's not that useful on its own. After Amayo's unstable element, Nomi will just take over the board, and maybe that's a way that Brox can win this one, but still got to draw the key legendary spell first.
Ooh. Lovely start for Eddie, though. Double questing is muy caliente, and Brox has strong follow-up, to be fair. You know, he's got a decent hand of his own, at least in terms of getting early board control, but it's really that turn 4 that you need to be capitalizing on and delivering that damage to face, which is exactly where Brox is going to start falling off. Because the obvious turn I'm looking at here is, what, Coin SI?
SI7, yeah.
That's step 1 play here, which gives you a 3-3 on the following turn. Not bad. It can trade even against pretty much everything Eddie will play on the following turn. But he's trying to wonder, can I do better? Can I get a better play than that? Shadow step it here and then go for Eviscerate. Allows him to go for Cat plus SI on the following turn
That
as
is
well.
better.
It's not strictly better, of course, because
using up an Eviscerate definitely has its flaws.
Yeah, and he now has nothing on the board instead of a 3-3 on the board, which is a pretty big difference. But it does, of course, mean that his SI doesn't just have to trade unfavorably against a 3-3.
Just going to slam that questing adventure. I like it. The Shaman isn't packed full of early game removal. You sort of rely on the lackeys for that. Is Eddie going to play the coin just for the 1-1 on the questing adventure?
Brox.
Sorry, Brox, yeah. It's weak to Sandstorm Elemental if he doesn't.
Oh, it's such a tough choice. There's no lackeys yet, so of course lackey plus Wasp is not a possibility. It would have to be a lackey generator, which there's not that many, plus a very specific lackey to be able to kill it off
I think he should do it, Derek.
I think you coin. He's got the Bone Wraith now to protect it.
Exactly.
I think this is his best chance of winning.
That's the key decider for me. It's that, like, okay, if I do this, do I have something to do next turn? Yeah, Bone Wraith, that's decent.
I think this is smart. I think even trying to ignore Caster Vision there, where I can just see the Sandstorm Elemental, which would clear it off, I think this is the play. Because now Eddie has to find something pretty pronto if he's going to have any real chance of getting rid of the questing.
So it looks like he's going to find himself a Sludge Slurper, which he'll be able to play next turn, potentially with a lackey that can deal with it. But that questing has a little bit of time to stick around. Obviously, Brox can't do all that much with the questing yet. It's going to be just Bone Wraith, pretty much, and it's going to become a 5-5. The Bone Wraith does a decent job of protecting it.
It's interesting to think how this game would have played out differently if we'd seen different lines from Brox, because Coin SI7 on turn 3 would of course meant that he traded, in this particular instance, much, much better. Like, Coin SI was a much better play in this game.
Yes.
Not generally, which doesn't necessarily mean it was the right play to go for, which meant he could have just gone for a 2-2 questing there and value traded the questing explorer from his opponent. And so, I don't know, like, maybe it would have worked out. I mean, it probably would have worked out better. I'm wondering if that was maybe the correct play because of that.
Eddie wouldn't have played the questing explorer into the... so it's a wildly different path.
And he didn't know he had the questing. So I'm getting pretty results-oriented here.
Yeah.
But it's just interesting to think how it would have shaped out differently given the different lines. But I'm sure SNBrox is far from sad with how this is going right now.
Kobold Lackey is the one, though.
It's just not enough. It's just not enough. How many quest ticks is he on now? Was that his 4th minion played?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So 2 more needing to come down before we can see the full quest completion, which could be Cable Rat, Double Trade, Sandstorm Elemental on this turn. That seems pretty strong to me.
Double Trade Sandstorm Elemental does clear that up, does put the questing on 4. No way to finish it off though, so yeah, that makes most sense to me too.
Yeah, you're never killing that questing. And it just sets up for hero power plus 4 damage Lackey on the following turn.
Oh, Rush. Wait, are we killing the questing now?
Don't think so, right?
No, not quite. It's close. But what we are doing is completing that quest, which means next turn Eddie should be able to find a way to get rid of that questing adventure unless it grows dramatically, which it can't. There's no way of activating that evil miscreant, which means Brox is playing 1 card this turn, maximum.
That draw was not it, Chief. You're looking for any kind of card that adds a random shaman card to your hand.
Yeah.
Obviously the Swashbuckler, Blink Fox.
Perfect that turn.
Yeah. Whole bunch of good stuff there, but Evil Miscreant doesn't do nothing. So, are we looking at SI7 Agent Hero Power?
Yeah, that's what I was looking at. It's that or Vendetta, and Vendetta is no better than just the Hero Power here. So, Hero Power it is going to be, I guess, the value trade there with the Bone Wraith on the 1/1, and yeah, questing goes face.
And to be fair to Eddie, even though I was suggesting Sandstorm Elemental on the previous turn to spend all your mana, clear the most amount of stuff off board, set up for the Kobold Lackey on the following turn, he now gets a disgusting Sandstorm Elemental.
Hero Power, Sandstorm Elemental, and Kobold Lackey just clears the questing immediately.
That may have just been the winning play he went for. Because of the trade, it makes it a little bit more awkward because he can't get the full damage and then trade in the 1/1 into the 2/1 Reborn Bone Wraith. But I think he'll still be a pretty happy chappy, all things considered. Absolutely huge. This was very well played by Eddie. I liked this line a lot from him, and I didn't see it.
Yep. Now Brox is very much backed into a corner. He does draw the Sap, which doesn't have any good targets.
It's got to be Edwin Miscreant, I think. There's just no other play.
God. What has Edwin been reduced to?
A 3-mana 2/2. Those are its stats.
Well, yeah.
Be happy. You're putting it in your deck.
The Brotherhood shall come.
Ooh. There's nothing you like seeing more than a 3-mana 2/2 Edwin coming down.
When you're on the other side of the board.
Oh, yes,
anyway.
of course. If your name is Eddie.
All right, well, here we go. Now it's Value Town. As Evil Cable Rat gets 2 lackeys. These lackeys can go off twice, or Novice Engineer can draw 2 cards. Let's discover 2 spells. That seems good.
Yeah, now for Eddie, priorities 1 through 57 are deny damage to face. That is how he wins this game. Life Drinker, of course, does effectively reduce damage, so he can be, maybe reduce it down to prioritize 1 through 24. But he still does need to make sure he's not dying to Waggle Picks and Leroy's, because Bronx has had a couple of cards knocking about in hand that he hasn't played for the entire game, and Eddie's definitely going to be wondering, Leroy, that could very well just be a Leroy to try and close out the game.
I wonder.
Witch's Brew, therefore, is obviously an incredibly tempting option, which Eddie will be considering. But at the same time, he already has 12 heal minimum in hand with the double Life Drinker, not even factoring in the bounce effects he could get later on in the game. And I do there wonder if it is just Earthquake in case anything goes wrong. This is safe. This is the safe option to just go for, to heal up no matter what.
Yeah, no complaints here. The Rogue isn't very good at dealing with a wide board anyway, even if it's a wide board of little minions. And as it happens, Brox still has nothing to do. It's going to be Wrapped Golem. And yeah, that makes sense. It's the biggest thing he's got at the moment. It's the only real play he had. But this is disgusting from Eddie. If you want to, that's Barista to fill up the hand again. Honestly, his hand seems a little bit too full to play Barista at the moment. So Life Drinker into Flesh Shaper, into Lackey or Novice Engineer. Really, the world is at Eddie's oyster at the moment.
He can't just completely close his eyes and play cards randomly, as you can often do to just not expend any mental energy.
Yeah.
But now with the Evolve that he's picked up as well, I think this is a pretty decent way to just start playing out your cards. He should just win. Trade. That allows him to completely take out the Wrapped Golem. Easy peasy, only really having 6 health effectively here. And then I'd have to imagine the Evolve coming down should be pretty much a death for Brox at this point.
I hope you like my invention.
That's not a Doomsayer, so we're happy.
Hex Lord Malacrest.
Yeah, that's probably not attacking for a while. Oh, I mean the, sorry, the Thrasher. Sorry. Yeah. Malacrest is attacking.
Malacrest probably wants to attack. Yeah. Is there any way of bouncing it, getting his battle cry to go off, adding another quest to your hand?
Whoa. Your hero powers activate four times now. Yeah, I'm not really seeing anything for Brox here now. No cards added into his hand from another class. It's called Burgle Rogue for a reason, and he ain't burgled nothing.
I wonder.
Okay.
Yeah, just the
Makes sense,
stats.
yeah, just get rid of the biggest thing, of course. Like you said, Thrasher is... attacking with Thrasher is a little bit awkward. Eddie takes 3 damage every time it attacks. Is the dagger going to the Acolyte? It is, wow.
Okay.
How much is this worth to you?
So he mills 1 card if he hits the Acolyte once more. I'm not...
This is not the line. Overdraw does not matter.
It does seem like Brox
iota.
is giving up here. Yeah, okay, he loses a Weaponized Wasp, but... Life Drinker, 6 damage. Sandstorm Elemental pretty much single-handedly clears the board.
Yeah, it's just Freddy here thinking, is there any combination of cards that kills me? Leroy, Shadow Step, Waggle Pick over the next couple of turns. It's not there. And I think that means we have our next semi-finalist.
Brox, big smile at his screen. He's done very, very well. Getting to the quarterfinals of a Masters Tour event is no lean feat. But Eddie does take this one down and is your 3rd semi-finalist here at Masters Tour Bucharest. And what an incredibly played series that was, Derek. I mean, he had to make so many decisions in so many weird situations there.
Yeah, I think that was a great testament to Eddie's playstyle, which is he plays so many of these weird kind of control decks that no matter what the scenario is, it always just feels like he's seen it before. And honestly, he probably has. He plays so many of these decks that he's just worked out through all the iterations that I think you can just clearly see he knows exactly what he's doing at all points there. And I think while Brox did absolutely the best he could, it was a pretty clear one-sided victory, both in terms of the results and the play.
It was just such a bizarre series through and through. That last game was a little bit more normal, but the first few, wow. Also, worth noting, this is one of the only 3-0s that I think we've seen, at least on the broadcast, all weekend.
Yeah, it's been a while. They've all been very, very close, usually coming down to reverse sweeps or almost reverse sweeps from one of the players. So I'm glad we get to see just a little bit of pure domination.
Yeah, me too. And again, it's cool to see a Grandmaster doing very, very well, making it into the semi-finals. Yeah, I mean, again, with Kin in the semi-finals now, as you pointed out earlier, he wasn't a Grandmaster before. We think that he probably is now.
Oh,
That's
he is,
cool.
100%.
Oh, he is 100% Grandmaster, yep. And then in the next series that we've got coming up, it's going to be Dead Draw from the UK versus Grandmaster and current Hearthstone World Champion Hunter Race. I'm looking forward to that match, Darren.
My allegiances are torn. Do
Yeah?
I go with my country, Dead Draw, for the slightly lackluster, it's fair to say, career of British Hearthstone, or do I go with Hunter Ace, who is very, very good at Hearthstone, and I personally like a lot as a friend. But, I mean, in all seriousness, while I do like both of these players a lot, I think Hunter Ace, everyone knows how good he is. I don't think enough people know how good Dead Draw is. The way the pros talk about this player, you'd think he was just the best player we'd ever seen in Hearthstone, Kalento 2.0. And while I think he has yet to prove that he's that good, he's definitely well on his way, and a win here could definitely prove that.
If I'm not mistaken, Dead Draw was top 8 in the previous Masters Tour.
He was.
In Seoul. And he's one of those players where he sort of, for me at least, he came out of nowhere. Because I remember when HGG Year 2 was announced, I was researching all the players that I knew were up for the vote. There was this player, Dead Draw, that I'd never heard of before. But then from that point onwards, I sort of kept my eye on him. He's just always right at the top of the ladder. He knocked me out of a tournament last year. I'm going to come out and say it. That wasn't a pleasant experience.
He's grinding top 5 legend in between games. He is good. Very, very good.
Very, very powerful player indeed. Well, I believe that is us done for quarterfinal round 3, but don't go anywhere. There is one final quarterfinal coming up, and then we have the semi-finals and the final. So plenty more of Masters Tour Bucharest coming up after this.